Hello, I'm Impact Weather Meteorologist Chris Aber with our countdown of the top 10 problems with most hurricane response plan. It was a very close call between problem number 1 and problem number 2, using the forecast arrival time of the wind field. But since problems number 2 and 3 went together, we have problem number 1 as the over-reliance on the Saffir-Simpson scale, in particular using the Saffir-Simpson scale as an estimator as to whether or not your site is going to be inundated by storm surge. Now, the Saffir-Simpson scale is only a wind scale. Sometime in the 1970s, some forecasters input a storm surge scale in the Saffir-Simpson scale, and that was done erroneously because a storm surge is not really a function of the Saffir-Simpson category. It's mostly a function of two parameters. One is the size of the wind field, and 2 is the location where the hurricane hits. Some areas are very prone to storm surge. That would be the southeast coast of Louisiana, the Mississippi coast, for example, as well as around the Tampa Bay, Florida area. The storm surge in those areas would be twice as high for the same hurricane as, say, someplace along the Texas coast. So some areas are much more susceptible to storm surge. Now, we looked at potential ranges of various Saffir-Simpson categories, and we can see that a Category 1 hurricane could produce anywhere from a 2-foot storm surge to a 20-foot storm surge. And a Category 5 hurricane, instead of a greater than 25 feet, which is or greater than 18 feet on the old Saffir-Simpson scale, we have a range anywhere from about 5 or 6 feet to as much as about 35 or 36 feet. It really all depends on the size of the wind field and where that hurricane hits. Now, what's a better thing to use instead of the Saffir-Simpson scale to judge whether or not you're going to be inundated by a hurricane storm surge? We developed something at Impact Weather after the 2005 hurricane season and after Category 3 Hurricane Katrina devastated the central Gulf Coast with a larger storm surge than Category 5 Camille in 1969. We developed the Hurricane Severity Index, which is a 50-point scale, 25 points allotted for the maximum sustained wind and 25 points allotted for the size of the hurricane's wind field. Now, let's take a look at an example. Ivan in 2004, Dennis in 2005. Ivan, the hurricane force winds in this pink area, much larger than the hurricane force winds, which you can barely see surrounding Dennis. Both were Category 3 hurricanes with 120, 125 mile per hour winds. But Ivan, size points on the Hurricane Severity Index, 20 out of 25. Dennis, only 6 out of 25. So Ivan was almost 3 to 4 times larger than Dennis, and as such, it produced 3 to 4 times as much damage as did Hurricane Dennis. So it's very important to know the size of the wind field as far as its damage potential and the possible storm surge at your location. So how can we use Hurricane Severity Index in your response plan? Well, instead of that Saffir-Simpson classification to move your people out of harm's way to evacuate when the storm surge threatens, we can use the size component only of the Hurricane Severity Index, and we can calculate an approximate component that you're going to be using for your particular location. Depends upon the vulnerability of storm surge at your location. If you're located in southeast Louisiana, that value might be 11 or 12 size points out of 25 points in the Hurricane Severity Index. And maybe if you're on the middle Texas coast, it might have to be 14 or 15. If you're over in the southeast Florida, it might take a hurricane with a size component of maybe 20 or 22 points. It all depends on where you're located and the size of the wind field. We can also use the Hurricane Severity Index as a plan accelerator. Maybe you're almost at that next trigger in your response plan, but we have a Hurricane Severity Index predicted of maybe 25 points or larger. A very large and powerful hurricane is heading your way. You might choose to activate that next phase of your hurricane plan a little bit early, maybe a few hours earlier, because I can guarantee you that those around you are more likely going to be activating their plans a little bit earlier with such a storm threatening your location. One tool that we've developed to help you out once you've incorporated all the objective guidance into your hurricane response plan is something called a trigger report. That's something we can generate for you with each advisory, and we can calculate, and this is your timeline in here, your action timeline using the objective guidance. We can calculate what hurricane phase your plan should be at right now, and we can also calculate when that next phase in your hurricane response plan is going to be reached. So you have an idea of where you should be now and when you're going to likely have to take that next phase of your hurricane response plan. If you're interested in such a trigger report, contact us at Impact Weather. So what's the next step now? Well, you've seen the top 10 problems with most hurricane response plans. You need to take a look at your response plan, reassess it, see if you see any of those problems in there, particularly problems number 1 through 4 in the action timeline of your plan. And if you do see such problems in your response plan, you need to change those out and use some objective guidance. Use the worst case scenario arrival time, the probability of wind impact, the hurricane severity index, and that hurricane risk indicator. And if you need help with that, certainly you can contact us at impactweather.com. Well, thanks for viewing. I'm Impact Weather Meteorologist Chris Hebert.